The Owl and the Traveler, a Christmas journey. In the vast plains of New Mexico, where the night sky stretched out like a starry blanket, there lived an owl named Sabia. Her amber eyes, deep as time itself, reflected the wisdom accumulated over countless moons. Sabia's feathers, a blend of earthy tones, camouflaged her perfectly against the gnarled trunk of the ancient oak tree she called home. Christmas Eve was approaching, bringing with it an unusual stillness. The cacti, usually stoic, seemed to bow slightly under the weight of gently falling snowflakes. The desert, always unpredictable, presented a rare spectacle, a fleeting white mantle that covered its dunes and valleys. As Sabia observed the transformed landscape, her keen ears caught a distant sound, a solitary, melancholic howl echoing through the night. It was a sound laden with despair, a plea for help carried on the cold desert air. Not far away, a young wolf named Luno wandered aimlessly. His grey fur, usually sleek, was matted and covered in sand. His blue eyes, typically bright with curiosity, were now clouded with fear and exhaustion. Luno had been separated from his pack during a violent sandstorm and now found himself alone for the first time in his life. The contrast between Sabia and Luno could not have been more striking. While the owl emanated an aura of calm and knowledge, the young wolf embodied uncertainty and fear. Sabia, perched steadfastly in her oak tree, symbolized stability and the wisdom of the ages. Luno, on the other hand, was like a leaf in the wind, directionless and at the mercy of the elements. Guided by a maternal instinct that transcended the boundaries between species, Sabia spread her wings and glided silently toward the source of the howl. As she approached, she saw Luno, a solitary figure against the snowy horizon, his body trembling not just from the cold, but from a deep, visceral fear. "Young traveler," Sabia's voice was as soft as the night breeze, yet carried an authority that made Luno perk up his ears. "Why do you wander alone on this sacred night?" Startled by the owl's sudden appearance, Luno took a step back, his instincts momentarily torn between natural distrust and the desperate need for help. I'm lost," he stammered, his voice hoarse from howling. "I can't find my pack. I don't know where to go or what to do." Sabia landed gracefully on a nearby rock, her eyes fixed on the young wolf. "Sometimes, young Luno, we lose our way so that we may truly find ourselves," she said, her voice imbued with ancient wisdom. "Come, let me guide you on a journey that will teach you more than just the path back home." Luno hesitated, his wolf instincts battling the need to trust a stranger. But there was something in Sabia's eyes, a kindness and understanding that transcended the barriers between predator and prey, that made him take a tentative step toward her. How do you know my name?" he asked, his curiosity momentarily overpowering his fear. Sabia tilted her head, a mysterious gleam in her eyes. "The wind whispers many secrets to those who know how to listen, young Luno. And tonight, it told me about a brave wolf who needs to find his way, not just through the desert, but through life." Sabia's words seemed to echo through the desert, carrying a weight and meaning that Luno didn't fully understand, but that resonated deeply within his heart. Suddenly, the vastness of the desert didn't seem so daunting. The stars in the sky appeared to shine a little brighter, offering hope. But what if we can't find my pack?" Luno asked, his voice trembling slightly. Sabia spread her wings, the motion smooth and reassuring. "The journey is as important as the destination, young Luno, and sometimes it's during the search that we discover what we truly need." With those words, Sabia took flight, hovering just above Luno's head. The young wolf, driven by a mix of desperation and a growing sense of trust, began to follow her. Together, they embarked on a journey through Christmas night, a journey that promised to be much more than a simple search for a lost pack. As the snow continued to fall softly, covering their tracks, Luno and Sabia pressed on through the desert. The wind howled gently, as if singing a Christmas carol, a melody of hope and possibilities. And so, under the starry sky of New Mexico, an unlikely friendship began to blossom, promising to transform not just the night, but the lives of both travelers. As Sabia and Luno moved through the snowy New Mexican landscape, the world around them came alive with subtle yet meaningful details. The desert, typically associated with scorching heat and aridity, revealed an unexpected beauty under its white mantle. Snow-covered saguaro cacti stood like silent sentinels, guarding the desert's ancient secrets. Luno, accustomed to open plains and rocky mountains, marveled at the transformation of the landscape. His sharp eyes caught the small movements of desert life, a jackrabbit darting quickly between shrubs, leaving tiny footprints in the snow. A collared lizard peeking out from beneath a rock, its body in a state of semi-hibernation. "Look, young Luno," Sabia said softly, perching on a snow-dusted Joshua tree. "See how the desert adapts. Every creature, every plant finds a way to thrive, even in the harshest conditions." As they journeyed on, Sabia shared stories of the desert, weaving in the ancient wisdom of the Navajo and Apache peoples who had lived on those lands for millennia. She spoke of constellations that guided travelers, of plants that healed, and of spirits that protected the land. Luno, in turn, began to open up. He told Sabia about his pack, about the hunting lessons he had learned from his father, the Alpha, and about the stories of courage his mother used to tell him before bed. "My mother always said that a wolf's strength lies in the pack," Luno said, his voice tinged with longing. "But now I'm alone. How can I be strong?" Sabia looked at him with understanding. "The pack isn't only those we're born with, Luno. Sometimes we find our strength in unexpected places and in friends we make along the way." As the night wore on, they encountered other desert inhabitants. An old coyote with graying fur and wise eyes shared stories of ancient times when the first settlers arrived in those lands. A family of rock squirrels offered stored nuts, a gesture of kindness that deeply moved Luno. Each encounter revealed more about the complex and interconnected world of the desert. Luno learned that just like his pack, there was also a community here, different but equally united by the need for survival and mutual support. Sabia, in turn, revealed layers of her own story. She spoke of her years watching the desert change, of lessons learned with each season, and of wisdom accumulated over countless nights beneath the stars. "I wasn't always wise, you know," she told Luno with a twinkle in her eye. "There was a time when I too was lost, searching for my place in the world." This revelation surprised Luno. "But you seem to know everything." Sabia chuckled softly. "Knowledge comes with time and experience, young wolf. Every challenge we face, every mistake we make, every act of kindness we show, it all shapes us." As they moved forward, the landscape subtly shifted. Sand dunes gave way to impressive rock formations, sculpted by wind and time. Ancient petroglyphs adorned some of the rocks, telling stories of peoples long gone. Luno, fascinated, asked about the symbols. "These are whispers from the past," Sabia explained. "They remind us that while things change, some truths remain. Love, courage, the search for meaning, these are life's constants, whether you are an ancient human or a young wolf on a journey of discovery." As the night progressed, Luno felt himself changing. His initial fear was giving way to a growing curiosity and a sense of purpose. He began to understand that this journey, though unexpected, was teaching him lessons no life in the pack could have offered. Sabia observed Luno's transformation with a mix of pride and nostalgia. She recognized in him the same adventurous spirit and thirst for knowledge that had once driven her on her own journey of self-discovery. As the stars continued their silent dance above them, Sabia and Luno pressed on, two souls bound by fate, each step taking them deeper, not only into the heart of the desert, but also into a greater understanding of themselves and the world around them. As Luno and Sabia moved through the frozen landscape, new challenges began to emerge. The wind, once a gentle breeze, intensified, howling between the rocks and creating small snow swirls. The temperature plummeted, and Luno, despite his thick fur, began to shiver. "Sabia!" Luno called, his voice nearly swallowed by the wind. "I think a storm is coming. Maybe we should find shelter." The owl landed on a nearby rock, her eyes scanning the horizon. "You're right, young wolf. But shelter is not always what it seems. We must choose wisely." Not far ahead, they spotted a dark cave on the side of a mountain. It appeared to offer protection from the elements, but as they approached, a low growl echoed from within. "A bear," Sabia whispered. "It's probably hibernating." Luno felt fear rise in his chest. "What do we do now? We can't go in there, but we can't stay out here either." Sabia looked at Luno intently. "Sometimes, young wolf, the greatest obstacle is not what lies before us, but the fear within us. Remember the lessons of your pack. How do you face challenges together?" Luno closed his eyes, recalling hunts with his family. We communicate. We work together. Each one has a role." "Exactly," Sabia nodded. "So what will our roles be now?" With renewed courage, Luno approached the cave entrance. He let out a soft howl, not threatening but respectful. To his surprise, the bear emerged from the shadows, not angry but curious. "Travelers," the bear growled, his voice deep as thunder. "What brings you to my den on this stormy night?" Sabia flew forward, landing between Luno and the bear. "Noble guardian of the mountain, we seek only temporary shelter from the storm. Might we share your dwelling until the tempest passes?" The bear studied them for a long moment. "It's been a long time since I've had company." "Come in! But know this, my slumber is sacred. Disturb it and our truce will end." As they settled into the cave, Luno realized that the true challenge wasn't the storm outside, but learning to coexist with creatures so different from himself. Hours passed, and the storm worsened. The bear, agitated by the noise, grew increasingly restless. Noticing the rising tension and recalling Sabia's lessons, Luno decided to act. He began sharing stories of his pack, of hunts under the full moon and starry nights on the plains. His voice, soft and melodic, soothed not only the bear, but seemed to calm even the fury of the storm outside. Sabia watched with pride. "See, Luno, how you turned conflict into connection. That is the true strength of a leader." When the storm finally subsided, the bear surprised them. "Young wolf, your presence has brought peace to my den. Take this lesson with you. Sometimes what we fear can become our greatest ally." As they left the cave, Luno felt transformed. He had faced his fear and discovered an inner strength he didn't know he possessed. But new challenges lay ahead. The path before them was blocked by a deep ravine carved out by the storm. On the other side, they could see familiar tracks. Luno's pack had passed through there. "We're so close," Luno exclaimed, his voice a mixture of hope and frustration. Sabia landed beside him. "The easiest path is not always the best, Luno. Sometimes we must create our own bridge." Inspired by her words, Luno began searching for a solution. He noticed fallen trees and loose rocks nearby. With determination, he started pushing and arranging these elements, crafting an improvised passage over the ravine. The work was grueling, and many times Luno wanted to give up. But with each obstacle, he remembered the lessons he'd learned, the desert's adaptability, the wisdom of collaboration, and the strength found in facing fears. Finally, after hours of effort, a makeshift bridge took shape. Luno looked at his creation with a mix of pride and disbelief. "You see, young Luno," Sabia said softly, "the greatest obstacle often leads to our greatest achievement. This bridge is not just a crossing over the ravine, it is a symbol of your inner journey." As they prepared to cross, Luno realized that every challenge he had faced had brought him not only closer to his pack, but closer to discovering who he truly was and what he was capable of. As Luno and Sabia crossed the improvised bridge, the young wolf, once timid and uncertain, now walked with newfound confidence. Sabia, for her part, watched her pupil with a mix of pride and concern. "Luno," Sabia called, her voice soft against the wind, "what have you learned so far on our journey?" The wolf stopped, reflecting. "I've learned about courage, adaptation, and the strength that comes from facing our fears," he replied, his voice carrying a newfound maturity. Sabia nodded, satisfied. "And what do you think you still need to learn?" Before Luno could answer, a sharp cry pierced the air. Not far away, they saw a young coyote caught in a hunter's trap. Luno's instinct was to rush to help, but Sabia stopped him with a wing. "Be careful, Luno. Not everything is as it seems at first glance." Approaching cautiously, they discovered that the coyote wasn't truly trapped. It was a ruse designed to lure unsuspecting prey. The coyote, realizing his trick had been uncovered, laughed nervously. "Hey, don't blame me. A guy's got to eat, right?" Luno felt a mix of anger and pity. "But tricking others? That's not right," Sabia intervened. "Sometimes, Luno, desperation leads to difficult choices, but there is always a better way." Turning to the coyote, she offered, "What if we showed you a different way to survive, one that doesn't rely on deception?" Intrigued, the coyote agreed to accompany them for a while. As they traveled, they encountered other animals, each with their own struggles and stories. A family of squirrels was struggling to find food in the snow. An old badger, lonely and bitter, refused to leave his den. Luno, inspired by Sabia's teachings, began to see each encounter as an opportunity to help and learn. He taught the coyote hunting techniques he had learned from his pack. He helped the squirrels uncover nuts buried beneath the snow. With patience, he convinced the badger to join them for a shared meal. Each interaction added a new layer to Luno's journey. He wasn't just searching for his pack. He was discovering the power of community and compassion. Still, time was passing, and the pressure to find his family grew. Luno could feel Christmas drawing closer, along with a sense of urgency. "Sabia," he said one night as they rested beneath the stars, "what if we don't find my pack in time? What if I miss Christmas with them?" The owl looked at him with her wise eyes. "Luno, the true meaning of Christmas isn't about where you are, but how you live your values. Look around you. You've created a new family here, uniting lonely hearts." Luno reflected on her words, observing the coyote, the squirrels, and the badger sleeping peacefully nearby. He had turned strangers into friends, enemies into allies. Yet a shadow of doubt lingered in his heart. Was he truly ready to lead, to make a difference in the world? As if reading his thoughts, Sabia added, "True leadership, Luno, isn't about having all the answers. It's about inspiring others to find the best in themselves." With these words echoing in his mind, Luno fell asleep, dreaming of the challenges and discoveries that awaited him the next day. The dawn of Christmas morning brought with it a thick mist that blanketed the desert landscape. Luno and his newly formed companions, Sabia, the cunning coyote, the squirrel family, and the old badger, prepared to continue their journey when a distant howl pierced the air. Luno froze, his ears perking up in alert. "It's my pack!" he exclaimed, his heart racing with a mixture of emotions. Joy, relief, and surprisingly, a hint of apprehension. Sabia perched on Luno's shoulder. "The moment you've been waiting for has arrived, young wolf. But remember, what we seek isn't always exactly what we find." Guided by the sound, the group pressed forward through the mist. As they drew closer, the outlines of several wolves began to materialize. Luno ran ahead, eager to reunite with his family. However, as he got nearer, he realized something was wrong. These weren't the wolves from his pack. They were larger, fiercer, with scars from past battles. It was a nomadic group known for their brutality. Their leader, an imposing grey wolf with a scar over his eye, stepped forward. Well, well, a lost pup," he growled, his voice a mix of threat and false sympathy. "Looking for a home? We can offer you one for a price." Luno backed away, sensing the danger. He glanced at his companions, seeing fear in their eyes. The coyote was already preparing to flee, the squirrels trembled, and even the old badger seemed hesitant. It was at that moment that Luno realized this wasn't just a trial for him, but a test for the group he had brought together. He couldn't think solely of himself or finding his original pack anymore. He had responsibilities now. Taking a deep breath, Luno stepped forward. "Thank you for your offer," he said, his voice steady despite the fear, "but I already have a family. These are my companions, and we are just passing through." The leader of the nomadic wolves laughed, a cold and cruel sound. "How touching! A band of misfits led by a pup. Perhaps we should teach you how the world really works." The nomadic wolves began to circle the group, their teeth bared. Luno knew they couldn't win in a direct fight. He needed to think fast. That's when he remembered all the lessons he had learned on his journey. The desert's adaptability, the strength of community, the wisdom of facing fears. "Wait!" Luno shouted, his voice echoing across the plain. "Before you do anything, let me tell you a story. A Christmas story." The nomadic wolves stopped, surprised by this unexpected reaction. The leader, intrigued, gestured for Luno to continue. Luno began to recount his journey. He spoke of getting lost and finding unlikely friends. He shared how he learned that true strength comes from unity, not domination. He talked about the spirit of Christmas, not gifts or feasts, but compassion, understanding, and the ability to see beyond differences. As he spoke, something extraordinary happened. The mist began to lift, revealing a breathtaking sunrise. Golden rays danced between them, illuminating not just the landscape but the hearts of all present. The leader of the nomadic wolves, moved by the story and the scene before him, lowered his guard. "In all our years of wandering, we've never met anyone who offered us anything but fear or hostility," he said, his voice now soft. "Perhaps we've forgotten what really matters." At that moment, another howl rang out, this time familiar. Luno's pack had finally found him. But to everyone's surprise, Luno didn't run to them immediately. Instead, he turned to the nomadic wolves. "You're welcome to join us as well," he offered. "We don't need to be enemies. We can learn from one another and grow together." This gesture of compassion and inclusion touched everyone deeply. It was as if, in that moment, the barriers between different groups, species, and individuals had dissolved. As his pack approached, Luno realized he had found much more than just the way back home. He had discovered his true strength, his ability to unite and lead, and the real meaning of family and community. Sabia, watching from a nearby branch, smiled. "You see, Luno," she said softly, "sometimes we get lost only to find a path greater than we ever imagined." The Christmas sunrise illuminated an extraordinary scene in the New Mexico desert. Wolves, a coyote, squirrels, a badger, and a wise owl gathered in an unlikely circle of peace and mutual understanding. Luno's pack, newly arrived, observed the scene with a mix of surprise and curiosity. Luno's father, the pack's alpha, stepped forward. His eyes, once filled with worry, now shone with pride as he saw his son at the center of this diverse group. "Luno," he said, his deep voice echoing across the plain, "I see your journey has taken you down paths we could never have imagined. Tell us, what happened during your time away?" Luno looked at his new friends and then at Sabia, who nodded encouragingly. He began to recount his story, from the moment he was lost in the storm to his encounter with the nomadic wolves. He spoke of the lessons he had learned, the challenges he had overcome, and the friendships he had forged. As Luno shared his adventures, the members of his pack exchanged looks of astonishment and admiration. The young wolf who had left was now a natural leader, capable of uniting creatures of different species and backgrounds. The leader of the nomadic wolves, impressed by Luno's maturity, addressed the alpha. "Your son has shown us a new way to see the world. Perhaps there's room for us to learn from one another." This statement caused murmurs among both groups. The idea of nomadic wolves cooperating with an established pack was unprecedented. Luno's mother, her eyes brimming with tears, embraced her son. "You didn't just find your way back home, you brought others with you. That is the true spirit of Christmas." The coyote, once solitary and cunning, stepped forward. "Luno taught me there are honest ways to survive. I'd like to learn more from you, if you'll have me." The squirrels, still a bit nervous but encouraged, added, "And we could share our knowledge about storing food for winter." Even the grumpy old badger seemed more open. "Humph, I suppose my digging skills could come in handy for everyone." Sabia, watching it all from her perch, smiled. She flew down to perch on Luno's shoulder. "See, young wolf, how your actions have created ripples of change. You didn't just find your way, you illuminated the path for others." The alpha, after a moment of reflection, made a decision. "This Christmas has brought us more than we expected. Luno, you've shown wisdom beyond your years. From this day forward, our pack will be open to new ideas and new members." This declaration was met with howls of approval and cheerful chirps. The morning mist had completely lifted, revealing a new day full of possibilities. Luno, overcome with emotion, looked at each of his journey companions. He knew this was just the beginning. There would be challenges ahead, adjustments to be made, but the most important step had been taken, a move toward a more united and understanding community. "Thank you, Sabia," Luno whispered to the owl. "Without your guidance, none of this would have been possible." Sabia blinked wisely. "Remember, Luno, the journey never truly ends. Every ending is just the beginning of a new adventure." Erdin! As the sun climbed higher in the sky, bathing the desert in its golden light, the diverse group began to move together, ready to face the future, not as strangers or enemies, but as a community united by the spirit of understanding and acceptance that Luno had fostered during his Christmas journey. In the days following that unforgettable Christmas, the new community formed by Luno faced various challenges. Integrating such diverse species was no easy task, and every day brought new obstacles to overcome. One morning, Luno woke to the sound of an argument. The coyote and some pack members were clashing over hunting techniques. The wolves, accustomed to hunting in packs, didn't trust the coyote's solitary methods. "See, young leader," said Sabia, landing beside Luno. "Leading in peace is just as challenging as leading in conflict." Luno nodded, understanding that his journey of growth was far from over. He approached the group, his presence immediately calming the rising tensions. "Friends," he began, "our strength lies in our diversity. Instead of arguing, why don't we learn from each other? Coyote, you could teach us your solitary hunting techniques, and perhaps our pack can show you how we work as a team." This inclusive approach surprised everyone. The coyote, initially skeptical, agreed to share his knowledge, and the wolves became more open to new ideas. In the days that followed, Luno organized training sessions where different species shared their unique skills. The squirrels taught efficient food storage techniques, the badger shared his expertise in building secure burrows, and the nomadic wolves demonstrated survival tactics for harsh terrains. Not everything went smoothly, however. Some older pack members resisted the changes, fearing that their traditions would be lost. Luno realized he needed to find a balance between honoring the old ways and embracing the new. He sought Sabia's advice. "How can I honor our traditions while embracing new ways of living?" he asked. Sabia took him on a night flight, hovering above the sleeping community. "Look closely, Luno. See how each creature maintains its essence but also adapts. True tradition is not static, it evolves." Inspired, Luno had an idea. He organized a celebration where each group would share an important tradition from their culture. The wolves demonstrated their unison howling that strengthened pack bonds. The coyotes performed dances mimicking the movement of desert winds. The squirrels showcased an intricate tree-jumping choreography. This celebration not only honored the traditions of each group, but also created new shared memories, forging stronger bonds among everyone. As winter deepened, the community faced its greatest challenge yet, a food shortage. The intense cold had affected their usual prey, and hunger began threatening the hard-won harmony. Luno knew this was a critical moment. He gathered everyone and proposed a joint hunting expedition, something never attempted before. "Each of us has unique skills," he explained. "Together, we can overcome even the toughest situations." The expedition was a success beyond expectations. The coyotes tracked distant prey. The wolves coordinated the chase, the squirrels acted as sentinels in the trees, and even the old badger contributed by digging to flush out hidden prey. Returning victorious with enough food for everyone, the community celebrated not just the end of their hunger, but also the living proof that their unity was their greatest strength. That night, under a starlit sky, Luno reflected on his journey. He had grown from a lost young wolf into a leader capable of uniting the different, transforming conflicts into cooperation. Sabia, noticing his thoughts, spoke gently. "Remember, Luno, true growth never ends. Every challenge overcome is an opportunity to grow even more." Luno nodded, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for all he had learned and experienced. He knew there was still much to learn, many challenges to face. But now he understood that with compassion, wisdom, and the strength of community, any obstacle could be overcome. Looking at his diverse and united community, Luno felt a wave of pride and hope. The future, no matter how uncertain, seemed bright and full of possibilities. As spring approached, bringing the first signs of renewal to the desert, a new threat loomed on the horizon. Rumors of an enormous sandstorm, greater than any the animals had ever seen, began circulating among the region's inhabitants. Luno, now respected as a leader not just by his pack, but by the entire diverse community he had formed, knew they needed to prepare. He called an urgent meeting, gathering wolves, coyotes, squirrels, the old badger, and other animals who had joined them in recent months. "Friends," Luno began, his voice firm yet gentle, "we face a great challenge. The storm that approaches will test everything we've built together." The coyote, once solitary, but now a valuable member of the community, stepped forward. "I've weathered many storms in my life. I can teach desert survival techniques." The squirrels, hopping excitedly, offered, "Our tree burrows can serve as shelters for the smaller animals." Even the usually reclusive old badger grunted, "I can dig deeper tunnels for protection." Luno smiled, proud of how his community united in the face of adversity. He turned to Sabia, who was watching from a nearby branch. "What do you advise, old friend?" Sabia cleared her throat, her eyes gleaming with ancient wisdom. "The storm is not just a physical challenge, but a test of the spirit of our community. We must prepare not only with shelters and supplies, but by strengthening the bonds between us." Inspired by Sabia's words, Luno organized the community into working groups, each focused on a different aspect of preparation. Wolves and coyotes worked together to hunt and store extra food. Squirrels and smaller birds reinforced nests and burrows in the trees. The badger led a team in digging underground shelters. Meanwhile, Luno concentrated on bolstering the community's spirit. He organized nightly storytelling sessions where each species shared legends of how their ancestors overcame great challenges. These stories not only entertained, but inspired and unified everyone. As the days passed and the storm drew closer, tension grew. Some animals, overwhelmed by fear, considered fleeing. Luno knew he had to maintain the group's trust and unity. One night, he led everyone to the top of a hill. Under a starry sky, he spoke, "Look at the stars. They shine brightest when the night is darkest. So will we. Together, we will shine through this storm." His words deeply moved everyone. Renewed in their purpose, the community worked with even greater determination in the following days. On the eve of the storm, Luno made one final round, checking the preparations. The shelters were ready, supplies were stocked, and every member of the community knew their role. When he returned to the center of the camp, he found Sabia waiting for him. "You've done well, young leader," she said softly. "But remember, the true test is yet to come." Luno nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility. "We're as prepared as we can be," he replied. "Now all that's left is to face what comes." That night, as the community settled into their shelters, the wind began to howl, carrying the first grains of sand. The great storm was arriving, and with it, the greatest trial Luno and his community had ever faced. The sandstorm hit with relentless fury. The wind roared like 1,000 enraged wolves. Sand whipped through the air, blotting out the sun and turning day into chaotic night. Luno's community, sheltered in their burrows and tunnels, faced their greatest challenge yet. At first, the plan worked perfectly. The shelters held strong, supplies were sufficient, and the spirit of unity kept everyone calm. But as the hours dragged on, new complications arose. A group of young squirrels, terrified by the relentless noise, fled their shelter in panic. Alerted by a coyote sentinel, Luno knew he had to act quickly. "Stay here," he ordered the others. "I'll bring them back." Sabia, concerned, tried to stop him. "Luno, it's too dangerous." But the young wolf was already gone, plunging into the furious storm. Sand lashed at his fur, and he could barely keep his eyes open. Guided more by instinct than sight, he followed the faint tracks of the squirrels. Meanwhile, in the main shelter, tension was rising. Some began questioning Luno's leadership, fearing he had abandoned them. The old badger, to everyone's surprise, stood up. "Have faith," he grunted. "Luno has risked everything for us before. We must trust him now." Out in the storm, Luno finally found the squirrels, huddled under a rock. With gentle firmness, he calmed them and began guiding them back. But the path home was unrecognizable, transformed by the storm's wrath. Lost and exhausted, Luno felt despair creeping in. Then, through the roaring wind, he heard a distant hoot. It was Sabia. The wise owl, braving the storm, had come to find him. Following her call, Luno and the squirrels finally made it back to safety. As they entered the shelter, they were greeted with relief and joy, but the celebration was short-lived. A deafening crash shook the shelter as part of the roof began to collapse, threatening to bury everyone. "Quick!" Luno shouted. "We need to move to the deeper tunnels." Amid the chaos, Luno coordinated the evacuation. Wolves carried the young of other species, coyotes guided the elderly, and squirrels scurried ahead, indicating the safest paths. Just as the last animal was nearly safe, Luno heard a cry. The old badger had been left behind, trapped under the rubble. Without hesitation, Luno rushed back. With all his strength, he pushed and dug, ignoring the pain and danger. Others joined him, and together they freed the badger. But it was too late for Luno to escape. As Luno pushed the badger to safety, the roof collapsed on him. For a terrible moment, all was silent. Then, suddenly, a collective howl rose. Wolves, coyotes, even the smallest animals united their voices in a chorus of determination. Working as one, they began to dig. Outside, the storm seemed to lessen, as if listening to their desperate plea. After what felt like an eternity, they finally reached Luno. The young wolf was injured but alive. When Luno opened his eyes, he saw the entire community gathered around him, their faces a mix of worry and relief. "You saved us," said the coyote, tears in his eyes. "No," Luno replied, his voice weak but resolute. "We saved ourselves, together." At that moment, as if responding to his words, the storm finally ceased. A ray of sunlight broke through the cracks in the damaged shelter, illuminating the united group. Sabia, perched nearby, spoke softly. "See, Luno, the storm may have destroyed our shelters, but it has strengthened our bonds. That is the true victory." Slowly, Leaning on one another, the group emerged to the surface. The desert was transformed, dunes had shifted, and the landscape was unrecognizable. But there they stood, united and alive. Luno, supported by his friends, looked at his community. They were no longer just a collection of different species, but a true family, forged by adversity and united by mutual love and respect. The great storm had passed, and with it, the final test for Luno and his community. They had faced the impossible and emerged stronger than ever. In the days following the great storm, Luno's community faced the challenge of rebuilding. The desert, though transformed, offered new opportunities. Newly formed dunes provided natural shelters, and the storm had unearthed long-buried water sources. Still recovering from his injuries, Luno watched with pride as everyone worked together. Wolves and coyotes hunted in mixed teams, using each species' unique skills. The squirrels, with their agility, helped locate new food sources. The old badger, grateful to have been saved, led efforts to create sturdier tunnels and shelters. One afternoon, as Luno supervised the construction of a new communal shelter, a young wolf from his old pack approached him. "Luno," the young wolf began hesitantly, "some of us have been thinking, maybe it's time for us to return to our old home, to live only among wolves again." Luno looked out at the horizon, reflecting for a moment. Then, with a gentle smile, he replied, "Look around us. Do you see how every animal contributes in their own unique way? Our strength lies in our diversity. This is our home now, all of us together." The young wolf nodded, understanding the wisdom in Luno's words. That evening, around a newly lit campfire, the community gathered to share stories. They were no longer just tales of wolves, coyotes, or any single species. They were stories of their shared journey, how they had overcome prejudice, fears, and challenges to create something new and beautiful. Sabia, perched on a nearby branch, called Luno aside. "You've come a long way, young wolf," she said, her eyes glowing with pride. "From a lost pup to a leader who unites the different. What have you learned?" Luno thought for a moment before responding. "I've learned that our true strength doesn't come from our individual abilities, but from our willingness to come together, to learn from one another. That the differences that divide us can actually make us stronger when we embrace them." Sabia nodded, satisfied. "And now, what will the next chapter of this story be?" Luno looked at his community, his eyes shining with determination and hope. "Now, we build a future together, a future where every individual is valued, where our differences are celebrated, and where we face every challenge as one." As the desert moon rose high in the sky, casting its gentle light on the new community, Luno felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The journey that had begun with a young wolf lost in a storm had become something far greater than he could have imagined. The desert, once a place of isolation and survival, was now a home of cooperation and mutual growth, and Luno knew that together they were ready to face any storm the future might bring. Sweet dreams, my little ones. Let the night carry you gently, and know that tomorrow I'll have more magical stories for you.